Somebody put in the guest book a few years ago, Living Aussie Heritage. And don't, as you travel, tell anybody this is another museum. I'm the only museum item in the place, and it plays and sings live. That doesn't happen in museums. What do they call it, that one? Apart from Waltzing Matilda, of course.
Matilda, my darling.
Yeah, that's Matilda, my darling in it, as the original has, yeah.
Oh.
They call it the Queensland version. That came from southern folk groups. That annoys me intensely because what that means is the popular one was composed in Sydney, which it wasn't. It's just an arrangement of Christina's work as it travelled. I played a gypsy tap. It would have been a waltz, slower. And when it got to be a quick step, almost identical to what's sung today. But that tune is the Cloncurry tune. Created in Cloncurry in 1907 by Bob McPherson, that good pianist, and his girlfriend Josephine Peeney, who was a music teacher. She was also the mother of his illegitimate child, son, whom I met when he was 70 and came and spent a week. It killed between a third and a half the population of Europe, the Black Death. Villages, whole villages disappeared sometimes, never to be seen again. Now what's the rhyme? The so-called nursery rhyme. They weren't for children. They're horror stories, disasters and scandals and tragedy. That's the one. You see, rosy rings were the symptoms of the plague. Red boils, suppurating black pus, a pocket full of posies, potpourri to keep the stench of death away, a white handkerchief dropped behind the back. You remember the game too?
Yeah.
You didn't know who in the street or the village might drop dead next and be wrapped in a white sheet for burial. The neighbours put a white cloth on all the doors of houses affected by the plague. Then they nailed up all the doors and windows. So if you didn't die of the plague, you died of starvation anyway, until 1,000 people a day were dying in London when the population was only about 80,000. Death carts, see what I mean? Anything else is a flea bite. Death carts coming around and picking up the corpses 2 and 3 times a day. You see, some people fell literally dead in the streets. A tissue, we all fall down. Okay, class, though, it's got a happy ending. What's that?
What?
Eh?
They all, what is it, something they all
Popped up.
popped up?
That's the one. The Great Fire of London, not long after, burnt a lot of the city. They all got well, and we all jump up. Now, is that not vivid for us still today, when you know, like it was for the people of the time? Let's have another look at Waltzing Matilda. Those nursery rhymes, so-called, it was only when the history got forgotten they became silly children's rhymes. We've done the same thing with Waltzing Matilda. It's a children's video and all sorts of things. So, why did it spread? If it was that silly story, it wouldn't have. Those nursery rhymes have 2 levels of meaning, as I've just illustrated. The history and the silly story, or a game. Waltzing Matilda is a masterpiece, a very clever piece of work. It has 3 levels of meaning. And tonight I'll try quickly to get those through to you. In 1894, there were 8 wool sheds burnt in this zone, and Dagworth was the last. And the difference with it was that 143 lambs were incinerated in the fire. That was a dreadful thing for all bush people. And later the same day, after the billy had been boiled for lunch, Frenchy Hoffmeister, one of the 16 Union raiders, shot himself by a true billabong, this one, on the back of your book. A very special billabong, as we'll come to shortly. Just 4 miles from the pub here. And again later in the afternoon of the same day, Bob McPherson, the squatter whose shed and wool and lambs had been burnt, he and 3 policemen, Austin Cafferty, Robert Dyer and Michael Daly, recovered Hoffmeister's body from the billabong and arrested his 7 mates, pending an inquest 3 days later. I have just told you the names of all the characters in the song, except the jumbuck, but we'll come to that. Okay, the squatter's name first, please.
McPherson. McPherson.
McPherson.
Yeah, that's right. You see what television's done to us? What hope for the kids. And incidentally, it's Ben and...
No, it's been over there.
Ben, no, over there is Will and...
Robin.
Yeah, lovely to have you. We've got 3, what I call young people. How old are you?
28.
Eh?
28.
28. Under 30, Ben.
Don't worry.
And
28.
You know me.
lovely to have you. It's so important that our young people come to grips with our wonderful heritage. Well, there you are. McPherson was the so-called squatter of Dagworth Station, just 21 miles from here, the homestead. The swagman's name, please?
Oh, no, one was Hoffmeister or something.
Yeah, Hoffmeister.
Hoffmeister.
Samuel Augustus Hoffmeister, baptised that at the age of 10 in the parish of St. Elizabeth, Brandenburg, Berlin. Age 43 when he died. But he's not exactly the swagman. He is the model, if you like. There's much more to it than that. He's the inspiration, the model. The cops, what were their names? Just give me
Thomas
one.
Daly.
Eh?
Daly.
I made a fuss of him, didn't I? Yeah. You got any of the others? Cafferty and Dyer. They are the 3 who actually rode up to the billabong with the squatter. As you can read here in the inquest evidence, it's there. And in my little book, The Swagman Story, out the front, you'll see all their signatures from the inquest. I am not talking hearsay or folklore. This is pure history and fact. You want any legend or myth, you go to Winton. You got plenty of that there. Anybody been through the display in Winton, the Waltzing Matilda Centre?
No, we called in there today, but we didn't go through it.
Yeah, we didn't go through
Why
it.
did he shoot himself?
It's a bit dearer than here,
Yeah, it's a lot here.
Why did he shoot?
but it's run by the government. Here you get the truth. You know what governments do? $5 million and they won't show you what Banjo Patterson said about the song himself. We'll come to that shortly. We'll come to a fair few things shortly. Well, there you are. The inquest found that Hoffmeister committed suicide by shooting. But you'll see his death certificate here in the display, and it says death by shooting. There was a mystery. And Patterson, as you'll hear shortly again, covered that as a careful man. He said a man was picked up dead. Covered it all. Well, that Battle of Dagworth was a turning point in Australian history. And you know, they reckon the world's best national anthems, like the Marseillaise, banned 3 times in France, and the Star Spangled Banner, have come from a turning point in history and the white heat of battle. So it is with our song, the Battle of Dagworth, and it certainly was a turning point in history. At the Battle of Dagworth, which it was called in the southern press, it went on for an hour. A lot of lead was fired by Bushmen, very good shots. We reenacted that for the BBC's British Empire series in 1971. They made me the leader of the Union Cheerers, even though I was a cocky, but I've always been a horseman. And I had a team of 15 others, and we burned a wool shed at about 1 o'clock in the morning, almost on time. The real one went up at 12:30. And I can tell you, there's been anybody behind that wool shed for a couple of 100 yards or in front of it or into it, they were dead meat, still there. My father used to play the saxophone with Bob at the dances. I learnt the tune from my dad when I was about 8. And because it was a dance tune, and because none of us had read music, it could never have changed a beat in 110 years this year. Gee, I'm sure you can know how proud I am to share this. Somebody put in the guest book a few years ago, Living Aussie Heritage. And don't, as you travel, tell anybody this is another museum. I'm the only museum item in the place, and it plays and sings live. That doesn't happen in museums. How much live entertainment have you had on the track? Hey? Some bush poets?
Bush
The bush
poets
party
last
last night.
Any music?
Yeah, we did the other night.
Yeah.
Where was that, Kynuna?
Any in the daytime?
Catherine.
No? People get live entertainment here in the daytime. I must be a fossil.
And you get Billy T too,
Shut up, Richard, and play this lovely music for them.
but the tea's not very good.
Waltzing
Better be
Matilda now with over 600 arrangements registered is the world's most recorded song ever. Did you know that? Not the most sung, like maybe White Christmas or Happy Birthday, but the most recorded song ever in the world. And what you're going to hear now, you won't hear anywhere else in the world. I hope you love this. Oh, there once was a swag when he camped in the Billabong under the shade of a coolibah tree. And he said as he looked at the old Billy Boyle, "Who'll come along? Who'll come along?" I looked at the bloody Billy and missed the note. So if you don't mind, I'll go back to the beginning again. Because I don't read music, I have to start again. Oh, there once was a swag when he camped in the Billabong under the shade of a coolibah tree. And he said as he looked at the old Billy Boyle, "Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Who'll come a waltzing Matilda, my darling? Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Waltzing Matilda and leading the water bag. Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me?" But the swag went up and he jumped in the waterhole, drowning himself by the coolibah tree. And his voice can be heard as it sings in the Billabong, "Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Who'll come a waltzing Matilda, my darling? Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Waltzing Matilda and leading the water bag. Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me?" Okay, is that worth $7 every day? Never mind. Warrnambool Races, April 1894, Victoria, where Christina heard this band march Craigie Lee by Thomas Boult of Ballarat. There's 17 band parts there, and one of them is not the button accordion. That's for a full brass band, and I'm not even full.
Not yet.
I bet you that band was at the races though. I'm going to try and make a drunken steak of it. You're all Aussies, and you don't know the name of the bloody jumbuck? Wesley. What's short for Wesley? Where's that jolly jumbuck? You can make money out of that. Where's that jolly jumbuck? And you know, that's not what Patterson wrote. He said, whose is the jumbuck? And it's a silly story, but we've made it even sillier. These stupid police come along. There's a sheep, a whole sheep in a sugar bag, and it would have had earmarks on it. And they say, where is it?
Then they answer their own.
Where's it? Where's it? Well, I mean, we're a silly lot. We just make things sillier. Hey, have you ever noticed that if you've got a short name, we lengthen it? If you've got a long name, we shorten it? We just never let up on it. In the Billabong, the swagman is the citizen, the free citizen, the worker, the itinerant worker, and no vote, no franchise because he's moving around all the time. The jumbuck is bankers and squatters' property in Australia. The Coolibars and the Billabongs represent Australia, just like the wattle does today. And the old Billy Boiling, have a look at this, the old Billy Boiling, same one Lawson was boiling. Not his Billy Boiling, or any other. The old Billy Boiling is the social conflict and turmoil of the 1890s when this country was forging a democracy out of a very unfair and loaded system. Then you get the three cops and the squatter riding it. Do we really need three policemen in this story? The squatter and a whip would have been enough. They represent the overwhelming authority used against the rights of the individuals during the 1890s when the military and the police came out in such great numbers and put them down, locked them up and shut them up. But they would be heard, as they still are, in the freest nation in the world. Now, tell me the word that I sang a while ago in the last verse that isn't ghost. Patterson's word. Tell me. Voice. Very different word, isn't it? That voice was the call of the bush people in Australia for a fair society, for a fair go, for the vote. And that's really what was drowned in the 1890s. And they all knew that. At that time, the Australian working people, never mind the upper crust, were the most literate in the world. They read more and they read better than anywhere else on the planet. They taught each other to read and write. They used jam tin labels or whatever. It was a great thirst for knowledge. Oh, gee, we've lost a bit. The other day I went over to the Roadhouse and four Fisher people there sitting outside having a cup of coffee. As I'm walking through the door, one of them said, "G'day, buddy." "Buddy," I said. "Buddy, where do you come from?" He said, "Down south." I said, "What, New South Wales?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Mate, up here it's mate." As I came out of the Roadhouse on the way out, he said, "G'day, mate." Anybody calls me Guy, they get the same sort of treatment. and they're massacring our language to become little Yanks.
They are.
Now, look, we've got a different culture, and we need to hang on to the difference, kids. We're the people who talk backwards and upside down, but, you know, we're silly buggers, but we can be very serious sometimes. We were not able to shoot each other at a battle at the only stockade in Australian history. That picture you got there was no stockade at Eureka. Flimsy border around a camping ground on a hollow, and I know because my great-grandfather, Richard, and his brother, David, 19 and 17, fought there, sensibly. My name's Richard David. We know. There was no stockade. That's a government drawing with the horses, the police, military vaulting over the stockade. That's like the Waltzing Matilda story. It's a government picture. And today our governments are really hiding a fair few things from us, aren't they? They tend to be allowed to tell lies. There's no government money here, and that looks like it too. And there's no government lies. The voice of the people, that's what was drowned. And not long after that, Queensland, only 4 years later, in December 1899, had the first Labor or socialist government in the world. Did we know that? The first Labor government in the world. Brisbane, December 1899. First in the world. You see, what I'm saying is that the leaders of democracy in the world, not just the Western world, were here. And that song had a lot to do with it. From the turning point in history that happened at that pub down the road. Have you been in the bar?
Which pub?
Down the other end is the window where that champagne was shouted. That is the centre of the story. People who had to drink together rather than shoot each other. We're different. Let's hang on to the difference. Good story? You bet. You can clap again, you bastards.